All right, chapter 13, Freak the Mighty, American Chop Suey. And remember, American Chop Suey isn't the same as if you went to like a Chinese restaurant. If you go to a Chinese restaurant, it's very different, as a matter of fact. American Chop Suey is almost the same as goulash. It's pasta with hamburger meat, shredded, and you also have vegetables depending on the family. You know, some people put peppers and onions, and definitely have it's a tomato sauce, but it's not the same as like a spaghetti sauce. So American chop suey is more or less goulash. Very good, by the way. I used to think all that spooky stuff about Friday the 13th was just a pile of baloney. But now I'm getting my own personal introduction to what can happen. Yeah, whenever you start a chapter off with Friday the 13th, definitely have some foreshadowing there. It's October, and so far, things have been going pretty good. Better than I ever expected. Me and Freak are like this unit, and even Mrs. Donnelly says she's starting to get used to us, which is her way of admitting that Freak is about twice as smart as she is, and for sure, he's reading more books. And remember, we're getting this off from Max's perspective, so he thinks Freak is extremely smart, and he is extremely smart. But obviously, the twice as smart as the teacher. Well, maybe that's true, but remember perspective always. It's first person, and Max is telling the story from the future. So, and obviously, Freak is his best friend. Probably the first kid who's ever liked him and given him props. She keeps saying stuff like, Kevin, we know you know the answer because you always know the answer. So wouldn't it be nice if someone else got a chance? For instance, your friend Maxwell. Freak goes, he knows the answer, Miss Donnelly. Yes, Kevin, I'm sure you're correct because you're always correct. But for a change, I'd really like to hear Maxwell speak for himself. Maxwell Kane. This is dumb because what does it matter if I know the answer? If I don't know, then Freak will tell me and he'll say it in a way I can understand, which is a lot better than Mrs. Donnelly can do. So what do? I just shrug and smile and wait because I know she'll get tired of asking and move on to the next. As a matter of fact, I do know the answer. The reason Johnny Tremaine got mad and hateful is because he burned his hand in a stupid accident. And I know that about that because Freak has been showing me how to read a whole book, and for some reason it all makes sense, where before it was just a bunch of words I don't care about. It's very interesting because Max is, he's considered learning disabled. We don't really know why. And I think the big question we've had throughout the book is he really learning disabled? And none of the teachers can seem to figure him out, but Freak has figured him out and is now teaching him how to read novels, which Max has never done before. My reading skills tutor, Mr. Meehan, he says stuff like, Max, the tests have always shown that you're not dyslexic or disabled, and this proves it. As you know, my personal opinion has always been that you're lazy and stubborn and you didn't want to learn. So if hanging out with Kevin somehow improves your attitude and your skills, that's great. Keep up the good work. It's always good when a teacher says, well, Kevin's helping you, even when I couldn't. It was Mr. Meehan who had a word with Mrs. Donnelly, and that's why she finally gave up on trying to make me talk in class, and instead, she waits until study hall, where she asks me the same questions alone, and I tell her the answers. She still doesn't get it, though, because she always goes, but Maxwell, if you can speak to me, then you can speak to your classmates, right? Wrong. Big difference. I can't explain what it is, except that my mouth shuts up when there's more than one or two people in a whole classroom full. Forget it. I think we probably all know people like that. I was like that as a kid. A lot of us are like that. It takes work and practice and to be able to speak in front of a lot of people, but sometimes people can just do it. Obviously, Freak can, which is very interesting. Okay, you're shy about public speaking, but how does that apply to writing down the answers? If you can read, then you can write, right? Wrong again. The reading stuff Freak helped me figure out by showing how words are just voices on paper. Writing down the words is a whole different story. No matter what Freak says, writing the stuff down is not like talking, and my hand feels so huge and clumsy. It's like the pencil is a piece of spaghetti or something, and it keeps slipping away. Make sure you highlight that when you get a chance. That is a simile, comparing the pencil and a piece of spaghetti. Mrs. Donnelly says okay for now. She's satisfied I can read, but we'll really have to work on this writing thing, won't we, Maxwell? And when she says that, I just nod and look away, because inside I'm thinking, forget it, no way. Like Freak says, reading is just a way of listening, and I could always listen, but writing is like talking, and that's a whole other ballgame. Anyhow, what happens first on Friday the 13th? We're in homeroom when this note comes from the principal's office. Maxwell Kane, your presence is requested. Gulp. Highlight that. What is it? What literary term is that? Instead of that, you say gulp. So Freak and I get up to go, and the teacher says, "No, Kevin, you stay here. Mrs. Addison was very specific. Maxwell is to go alone." Freak starts to smart mouth her, then he changes his mind and he nudges me and whispers, "Just give him your name, rank, and serial number. Deny everything. You aren't back by 1000 hours? We'll organize a search and rescue mission." What do you think the principal wants to see Max about without Freak? Think about the story and what we know about Max. Something's up, something's up. He offers to lend me his dictionary in case I want to try out any big words on Mrs. Addison, but I'm already so worried about being called in alone. All I can think is they're going to put me back in the learning disabled class. I've already decided I'll run away if they do that. I'll go live in the woods somewhere and jump out and scare people. Anyhow, I don't take Freak's dictionary along because my hands are trembly and I might drop it. Or Mrs. Addison might ask me a word and I'll forget how to look it up and prove I'm still butthead goon. Mrs. Addison is waiting outside her office, like she does, and she's trying to smile, but she's not really a smiling kind of person, and I can tell this is serious, whatever it is. Like maybe somebody died. I go, "Graham, is Graham okay?" Yes, everybody's fine. Come in and sit down, Maxwell, and please try to relax. Yeah, right. All right, so let's back up. Remember, we've only met Mrs. Addison once, and that was with Freak and Maxwell when they were, the first time they were standing, Freak was on Max's shoulders in Mrs. Donnelly's classroom, and they went to the office, and Freak got them out of trouble. So we know she's reasonable. I also think it's interesting that Max immediately is worried about Graham. Doesn't mention Grim, but does mention Graham. Is Graham okay? So you can tell that their bond is a lot stronger than he lets on. But you can see it through his actions throughout the book. So nobody's hurt, nothing's wrong. What does Mrs. Addison want? Mrs. Addison is sitting there in her big chair, and she's looking up at the ceiling, and then she's looking at the floor and at her hands, and finally she gets around to looking at me. If a person is looking around, not knowing what to say, what feeling do they have? This is rather difficult, Maxwell. I don't know where to begin. First, let me say we're all pleased with your progress. It's nothing short of miraculous. And it almost convinces me you knew how to read at your level all along, and we're for some reason keeping it a secret. I'm not really hearing what she's saying because there's this little bird fluttering around inside my chest. That's two lit terms. Simile, obviously. There's this little bird floating around inside my chest. So this feeling that he's having, he's comparing it to a little bird bouncing around. There's your simile. And then that's an exaggeration. The feeling isn't like a bird bouncing around in his chest. So that's hyperbole. And it makes me blurt out, "You're putting me back in LD, right?" Mrs. Addison comes over and pats me on the shoulder. I can tell it makes her nervous, touching me. but she does it anyway. And she goes, no, no, nothing like that. This has nothing to do with school, Maxwell. This is a personal situation. Because if I have to go back in the LD class, I won't. I just won't. I'll run away. I will. I will. Maxwell, this is not about your classwork or even about school. This is about your father. My father. Which makes me wish all of a sudden I'd done something wrong and Mrs. Addison was just giving me detention. She takes a deep breath and folds her hands together like she's praying. Simile. And she says, a request has been forwarded to me from the parole board. A request from your father, Maxwell. Your father wants to know if... I don't want to hear it! Now let's back up. And I do want to take note of what a parole board is. A parole board has to do with prison, and whenever you go to prison, there are certain things, certain crimes that come with the possibility of parole or getting out of prison. And you don't get out free and clear. You get out and you have to go see a parole officer. Usually, well, it depends on, how much they trust you. It could be once a week. I think it could be once a month. I'm not really sure. I don't really know exactly how the parole stuff works. But to do that while you're in jail, you go to a parole hearing. And what happens is a bunch of people listen to a bunch of people that work for the state and probably the prison, listen to the prisoner and a bunch of people that are with the prisoner and when I say that, like family members who try to convince the parole board, the people who decide this, whether or not the prisoner can go free. So Max's dad is possibly getting out on parole, and he's going before the parole board, and it looks like he wants Max to come. So ponder why. Does he want him just there because he hasn't seen him in a while? Or does he want him there to help him get out? We still don't really know anything about his dad other than he's done something bad. I jump up and cover my ears, holding my hands real tight. I don't want to hear it. Don't. What happens when you go nuts in the principal's office? She calls in the school nurse, and the two of them are trying to hug me and calm me down, and it's like I'm back in daycare or something. Maxwell, Mrs. Addison is saying. She's trying to pry my hands away from my ears. Maxwell, please forget about it, okay? Forget I said it. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, okay? And I'll make sure of that, I promise. I swear on my honor. He can't make you do anything you don't want to do. I'm going to make that very clear to the parole board and to his lawyer. Very clear indeed. Finally, I take my hands off my ears, which wasn't really working because I could still hear everything they said. And big surprise, I'm sitting in the corner of the room, down on the floor with my knees all hunched up, and I don't even remember how I got there. It's like I blanked out or something, and the nurse is giving me this cup of water, and the weird thing is, she's crying. I'm sorry, I say, I didn't mean to hurt you. You did it, she says. I cry easily, don't you worry about it. I do worry about it, though, because if she's crying, I must have hit her, and I don't remember it, which, if you think about it, is really scary. Who knows what I might do and then not remember it. That's all very interesting. We don't know if he really hit her or not. We know that he was really upset and covering his ears and doing that, oh, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it, don't. Kind of, what we do when we're little kids. And he sort of blacks out, and he doesn't know if he hit her or if she tried to move him and he maybe flung out. So it's a very interesting part of the book. The worst thing happens later in the cafeteria. So now, as bad as that was, something worse is about to happen. Freak has this thing about American Chop Suey. He loves this stuff. The gooier the better. You'd never believe a person so small could eat so much. And when he holds up the plate, he always says, "Please, sir, more gruel." And I always say, it's American Chop Suey, not gruel. I looked up gruel, remember? And he always goes, "I beg of you, sir, more gruel." And so finally I go up to get him another helping. When I come back, something is wrong. Freak's face is all red and swollen up, and he's making this huck, huck, huck noise. What is that? Huck, huck, huck. He can't talk. All he can do is look at me and try to say something with his eyes, and then I'm running to get the nurse. Quick, he can't breathe, he can't breathe. Then she's running as fast as me, and she's yelling for someone to call an ambulance. Back in the cafeteria, Freak is turning purple. The nurse grabs him, and she's got this plastic thing she shoves into his mouth, and his eyes are closed up tight, and one of his legs is kicking. I don't know what to do, so I start hopping up and down in one place, and when the kids keep crowding around, I push them back, and then the next thing, Freak's face is starting to look pink instead of purple, and he's breathing. Okay. Right about then, the ambulance comes. I never even heard the siren, and Freak is trying to talk in this croaky voice as they put him on the stretcher. I'm okay, he keeps saying. Really? I'm okay. I just want to go home. The deal is, once they call the ambulance, you have to go to the hospital and get checked out. That's a rule. I keep trying to get into the back of the ambulance with him, but they won't let me. Finally, Mrs. Addison has come out and pulled me away until the ambulance leaves with just the light going and not the siren. You've had quite a day, haven't you? She says, walking me back into the school. It's not me who had quite a day, I say. Kevin is the one. All he did was try and eat his lunch. Mrs. Addison gives me this look, and then she goes, You're going to be okay, Maxwell Kane. I'm sure of it now. She's okay for a principal, but for some reason I still can't make her understand that it's not me who had a really bad Friday the 13th. And I swear on the dictionary, if Freak ever tries to eat American Chop Suey again, I'll dump it on his head or something. My last thought for this chapter is, what made Mrs. Addison look at him and say, you're going to be okay? Right before that, she says to him, you've had a really bad day. And he, instead of saying, I've had a bad day, thinks about Kevin and says, it's not me who had the bad day. It's Kevin who had the bad day. He just wanted to eat his lunch. I want you to think about our levels, our 7 levels really, starting with 0 going through 6. And I want you to think about Max, and this specifically. I also want you to think about the character Mrs. Addison as a principal. How do you feel about her? You can leave a comment if you want to, or you can just come to class and let me know. Okay? All right, there it is. Tomorrow, cross my heart and hope. Ooh, that's hard to see. And hope to die. These titles or something. Oh, and is Killer Kane getting out of prison? And if he does, what's gonna happen? Bye.